Hi everyone, my name is Vanman, and welcome to my attempt at a hardcore Nuzlocke of Pokemon FireRed using only normal type Pokemon. The complete rules for today's challenge are in the description below, but in summary, I can only catch the first normal type Pokemon on any given route. If a Pokemon faints, it's considered dead and can never be used again. No items besides held items in battle, no over-leveling past the next boss trainer's ace, and finally we'll be playing on set mode at all times. The normal type. Honestly, one of the most underrated types in the game, partly because it's not super effective against any of the other types. But what you have to consider is that in any Pokemon game, the entire playthrough is going to be filled with normal type attacking moves that almost all Pokemon have access to, but the difference is that only normal type Pokemon get the same type attack bonus on all of them for even more damage output. So while we won't be seeing a lot of super effective damage in this run, we should still be able to round up a team that will hit hard and fast enough to get the job done. The Kanto region leaves us with a modest number of potential encounters that you see on screen for a total of 16. Although the power level of Lickitung, Ditto, and Eevee are pretty lackluster to say the least, so I think I'm safe in assuming we won't be relying on them. The other 13, however, will be extremely valuable to our overall strategy in some form or another. So, without further ado, let's dive into our attempt at a hardcore Nuzlocke of Pokemon FireRed using only normal type Pokemon. Our journey begins in Pallet Town, where Professor Oak lets us choose our starter, and after consulting my Twitch chat we choose Bulbasaur. But that doesn't actually matter much, because after our battle against the rival, we head north to Route 1 where we catch a Pokemon that will serve as the first permanent member of our team, a Rattata. After which we head straight to Route 22 west of Viridian City to catch a Spearow, followed by Route 2 just north of the city to catch a Pidgey. And since those three Pokemon are the only possible normal type encounters prior to the first gym, all that's left to do is train up our squad to the level cap of 14 in preparation for the first gym battle. And as we watch this training montage play out, now's a good time to mention that on this channel, I do Gen 1 solo runs all the time, and this is actually my first ever Nuzlocke of any kind. So if you're a veteran of the channel and you want to see more Nuzlocking content, feel free to let me know in the comments. And if you're new, feel free to subscribe to be kept up to date on the newest releases. Now, against the upcoming gym leader Brock, it's not going to be a simple matter to get past his team of rock-type Pokemon when they resist our only attacking moves, and when two of our Pokemon are flyers that are weak to Rock Tomb. But we are going in with a plan. First, against Geodude, we lead with Spearow, and we open with a bunch of growls to lower the enemy's attack stat. Then we switch into Pidgey to use 6 sand attacks to lower its accuracy. So hopefully that will mitigate the damage from Geodude's tackles, while we slowly chip away with Quick Attack and Gust. And indeed, we do manage to knock out the Geodude, with about half health remaining as we go into Onix. And against Onix, we get about the best luck ever, because while we continue to spam sand attack, it fails to hit us even once. And after the sand attack setup is complete, Pidgey survives without taking a single point of damage, which is fantastic because that means we can now switch into Rattata, who we intentionally poisoned before this fight, to take advantage of its Guts ability, which multiplies the user's damage output when either poisoned or burned. So now all we have to do is open with Tail Whip to lower the enemy's defense, and then spam Hyper Fang. And a few turns later, we've won the Boulder Badge with a grand total of 0 deaths on our team. Wow, talk about breathing a sigh of relief. Going into that battle, considering that 2 of your Pokemon are weak to Rock Tomb, you really do have to be prepared to sacrifice at least one team member for the greater good. But fortune was on our side that time, so now that allows us to leave Pewter City and head to Route 3 where we catch a Jigglypuff, followed by a Clefairy in Mount Moon, as well as evolving our Pidgey into a Pidgeotto, leaving us with a team of 5 Pokemon for the next boss battle. And by the way, it's also worth noting here that for this Nuzlocke, I'm including the rival battles and the Giovanni battles when considering our level caps, not just the gym leaders. So because of that, we have to face Rival 2 in Cerulean City at the level cap of 18 before heading into the Cerulean Gym with a level cap of 21. So to kick off the battle against the rival, we open with Clefairy, whose bulk allows it to brush off a quick attack from Pidgeotto before putting it to sleep with Sing. Then we switch to Rattata, who again thanks to its Guts ability deals heavy damage with Hyper Fang, but not quite enough for the one-shot, and we take it down in the next turn. Then the rival sends out a Rattata of his own, but like the newbie Nuzlocker that I am, it's here that I make my first huge mistake of the run, which is that although we outspeed, the opposing Rattata knows Quick Attack. And not only that, its Quick Attack lands a critical hit to bring us down to just 2 HP before we get the knockout with Hyper Fang. And as the rival sends out Charmander, poison damage finishes off Rattata for our first death of the run. So we switch into Pidgeotto, who takes out Charmander with a few gusts no issue, followed by Abra, But yeah, that Guts Rattata was supposed to be our heaviest hitter for the next big chunk of the playthrough, so losing such a valuable Pokemon this early is really going to throw a huge wrench in our game plan. But for now, all we can do is proceed forward, and after we make our trek across Nugget Bridge, we head back to the Cerulean Gym to face Misty. And here we actually have a pretty unique strategy, because against the opening Staryu we lead with Wigglytuff, who we evolved from a Jigglypuff with a Moonstone just before the battle, and we put the Staryu to sleep with Sing. Then we set up Defense Curl and Rollout to hopefully knock out the Staryu while it's still asleep, and although Staryu does annoyingly wake up right away and hit us with a Water Pulse, Wigglytuff is tanky enough that we brush it off and knock out the Staryu. And since Rollout's damage compounds every turn, that allows us to one-shot the Starmie as well for a clean sweep, winning us the Cascade Badge. So although the rival gave us some fits just earlier, it looks like we can handle Misty no problem. So then after defeating Misty, we head south to Route 6 to catch our next encounter, Meowth, followed by Vermilion City where we trade a spare Spearow for a Farfetch'd. Not an especially exciting pair of encounters I know, considering that Meowth and Farfetch'd both have abysmal base stats, but Meowth might be able to hit hard with Slash once it evolves into Persian, and Farfetch'd may be able to sweep an enemy team at some point as long as we can buff up our attack with Swords Dance. But we'll just have to wait and see about that. For now though, our next order of business is to take on Lieutenant Surge, and here our plan is to teach the TM for Dig to Meowth so we can sweep the team with super effective damage. But as soon as we kick off the battle, it's here that Meowth's terrible attack stat comes back to bite us, because our opening Dig doesn't even one-shot Voltorb, allowing it to retaliate with Shockwave to deal about a third before another Dig takes it out. Then against Pikachu we do manage to one-shot it with Dig, but as we face against Raichu, its next Shockwave swiftly knocks out Meowth. So we switch out to Clefable, who I'm confident will be able to tank a Shockwave, so in hindsight I'm sure I should have switched out to Clefable a turn sooner to prevent the knockout, but honestly the first time Nuzlocke jitters were starting to set in at this point, and I wasn't thinking as clearly as I could have. But anyway, with Clefable we open with Sing, which even manages to spite Raichu's double team to put it to sleep. But then Surge immediately wakes up his Pokemon with a full heal, and we deal about a quarter with Water Pulse. And now, Clefable and Raichu spend the next several turns trading Shockwave for Water Pulse, but since Surge uses a Super Potion to heal Raichu back to green, we can't keep up in the damage race and we have to switch out. So we bring out Pidgeotto, and Raichu, in an awesome stroke of luck, hits itself in confusion from our earlier Water Pulse, allowing Pidgeotto to outspeed with Quick Attack on the final turn for the knockout, winning us the Thunder Badge. So now coming out of this battle, that leaves us with our second death of the run, meaning we have to put Meowth in the PC forever. But let's be honest, Meowth was never exactly going to be a powerhouse of our team anyway. Still though, it was definitely at this point that I thought to myself, you know, it really is amazing just how different watching a Nuzlocke is from actually playing one, and just how much skill and patience you really need to perform one of these successfully. I mean, as I said before, I do Gen 1 solo runs all the time, but Nuzlocking is just a completely different animal, because it's so much more punishing to even the slightest mistakes, and even the smallest decisions will often carry the biggest consequences. So, after collecting my thoughts, I resolved right then and there that I can't afford any more mistakes like the ones I made against the rival in Lieutenant Surge. So, moving forward, we'll just have to tighten up our gameplay and make each decision as carefully as possible. And to test that resolve, we then make our way to Lavender Town, where inside Pokemon Tower awaits our next boss battle, Rival 4. So, to kick off against the rival's opening Pidgeotto, this time to play around Sand Attack we lead with Fearow because of its Keen Eye ability preventing accuracy loss, and we pretty easily knock out Pidgeotto with a couple returns while it spams Quick Attack. Now out comes Gyarados, and thanks to its Intimidate to drop our attack, Return only does about a third, and Thrash brings us down to yellow. And now since Gyarados is locked into Thrash, and the next Thrash would be lethal if it hit, we have to switch out to Pidgeotto, and Gyarados luckily becomes confused from Thrash and hits itself down to about a quarter after we hit it with Quick Attack. Then after the next Quick Attack, Gyarados snaps out of its confusion and retaliates with another Thrash to bring us to red. But now thanks to Quick Attack we're guaranteed the knockout, and Gyarados goes down. Then against the rival's Execute we switch out to Farfetch'd, whose attack stat is so weak that it doesn't even one-shot with a stab super effective Aerial Ace. But luckily Execute just goes for Reflect and goes down in the next turn. Then against Kadabra, between Disable and Future Sight, it never actually hits us a single time. And finally, Charmeleon and Farfetch'd trade blow for blow in a tight damage race, but eventually we take it down for the win. Then up next, we complete the Lavender Tower mission and head straight to the Celadon Gym to face Erika. And considering we have a full 3 flying Pokemon on our team to take care of her grass types, this battle shouldn't be too much of an issue. So to start, our Farfetch'd opens with Aerialace against Erika's Victory Bell, but again, its weak attack stat means we don't get the one-shot, and Victory Bell retaliates with Stun Spore, allowing it to outspeed with Acid before going down. And now, since Farfetch'd is paralyzed, we switch out to Pidgeotto to take out Tangela with a couple of wing attacks, but unfortunately Tangela poisons us with Poison Powder before facing Vileplume. But again, that shouldn't be a problem, because Wing Attack brings Vileplume to half health before it retaliates with Acid to bring us to yellow. However, it turns out I misjudged the damage range for Wing Attack, because our next attack leaves Vileplume hanging on with just a sliver, and as fate would have it, we have to pay for that mistake with our 3rd death of the run, as Vileplume goes for the kill with 1 more Acid. And although we do send out Fearow to finish off the Vileplume and win us the Rainbow Badge, that now leaves us with only 4 Pokemon remaining on our team. So the bad news is that another rookie mistake by not playing around damage ranges cost us another team member, but the good news is that we can still recover our team to a full squad of 6, with 2 fantastic replacements by heading to Route 16 just west of Celadon to catch a Snorlax, followed by Route 17 to catch a Doduo. And my hunch is that these 2 Pokemon will be the cornerstones of our team moving forward, because Snorlax is an absolute tank with a whopping 160 HP and 110 in both attack and special defense. Plus, as a bonus, we lucked out by getting a Snorlax with the Thick Fat ability, making it resistant to fire and ice type attacks. And although Doduo is pretty frail, once it evolves into Dodrio, its speed and attack are off the charts. So now, with our team consisting of Fearow, Wigglytuff, Clefable, Farfetch'd, Snorlax, and Dodrio at the ready, there's a very specific order that we have to complete our next several missions, because ordinarily our next opponent would be Rival 5 and Silph Co with a level cap of 40, followed by the gym leader Koga with a level cap of 43. But in this case, we have to do things a bit out of sequence, because my plan is to catch a Tauros as soon as possible, and the only place to find Tauros at a reasonable encounter rate is this little patch of grass in the Safari Zone that's blocked off by water, meaning that to get Tauros we have to use Surf, which in turn requires Koga's Soul Badge to use outside of battle. So what that means is that we're going into the Fuchsia Gym to face Koga underleveled, but I'm still feeling pretty safe as we kick off this fight, because we've taught Clefable the TM for Psychic, and with Clefable's formidable special attack stat, we managed to outspeed and one-shot the initial coughing with ease. Muck, however, is a lot tankier, so Psychic doesn't even deal half, but it does get the clutch special defense drop, allowing the next Psychic to take it out. Then, obviously, the next coughing goes down just as easily as the first, but against Koga's Ace Weezing, it outspeeds and leads with Toxic, after which Psychic brings Weezing to yellow. Then, in an act of desperation, Weezing drops our accuracy with Smokescreen, and although that does cause us to miss the next Psychic, it turns out Clefable and Weezing were speed tied, because we take the initiative in the next turn and land 1 more Psychic for the knockout, winning us the Soul Badge. And now that we've defeated Koga, that finally allows us to use Surf outside of battle, meaning we can head to the Safari Zone, and although it took a while for one to show up, we finally encounter a Tauros. So we throw a Safari Ball, and it breaks free and runs away. Well, that's irritating. But you know what? Since each area of the Safari Zone is home to different kinds of Pokemon than each other area, we're still within the Nuzlocke rules if we head to a different area and try our luck again. So in the next area we encounter a Kangaskhan, and it breaks free and runs away. So we head to the next area where we encounter a Chansey, and you wouldn't believe what happens. It breaks free and runs away. Well, so much for that plan. It sure would have been nice to have another offensive powerhouse join the party, but it looks like for now we're stuck with our 6 Pokemon that we've had since Celadon City as we head to Silph Co to face Rival 5. And in this battle, Farfetch'd has finally reached a high enough level to know Agility and Swords Dance, so the plan is to buff up our speed and attack and sweep the team with Secret Power. However, Farfetch'd just sets out to prove how frail it really is, because the rival's Pidgeot opens with Wing Attack to deal about a third, and after we use Agility we then outspeed and use Swords Dance, but the next Wing Attack from Pidgeot lands a critical hit to bring us to just 2 HP. So at this point I figured it's now or never to begin the sweep, so we go for Secret Power, but I'm sure you can see where this is going. Pidgeot sees the kill with Quick Attack and knocks out Farfetch'd to bring our death toll in this run to 4. So because of that, I send out Clefable to knock out Pidgeot with a single super effective Shockwave, followed by Gyarados who brings us to yellow before going down to a couple more Shockwaves. Against Charizard, however, to play around the critical hit, we switch out to our thick fat Snorlax to tank Charizard's fire moves. And indeed, Charizard's flamethrower only does a blip, followed by a weak wing attack before a couple surfs bring Charizard to yellow. And here, not even a critical hit from Charizard would knock us out, so we're free to go for another surf to take it down. Then against Execute, it's so slow that we're safe to outspeed with Rest to heal back up to full, and while we're asleep, Execute only manages some tiny chip damage, while we use Sleep Talk for another body slam, followed by another body slam after we wake up for the knockout. And finally, Alakazam will obviously outspeed, but Snorlax is so bulky that we'll survive a critical hit from any one of its attacks, meaning that we're safe to go for body slam, and after Alakazam goes for a useless Calm Mind, we get the easy one-shot. But now, even though we won that fight pretty handily, losing Farfetch'd still puts us down yet another team member. And at this point, since we're playing with the species clause in this run, we're starting to run out of potential replacements, with the only options left being Ditto, Lickitung, Eevee, and Porygon. So, as we head into the late game, I'll just have to be as careful as I can be to play around all of our possible lose conditions to make sure that we still have a full team of 6 for the Elite Four. But we still have a few more boss battles to go before making it that far, and up next on that list is Giovanni and Silph Co. So let's head into the battle and see how it goes. Since Giovanni's first Pokemon is Nidorino, we lead with Clefable to take it out with a couple super effective Psychics. Then Giovanni sends out Nidoqueen, so fearing the super effective double kick, we switch out to Dodrio, as Nidoqueen does barely anything with Poison Sting. Then Tri-Attack from Dodrio doesn't quite deal half, but a couple more attacks take out the Nidoqueen with Dodrio still comfortably in the green. And now against Rhyhorn, obviously Dodrio won't be able to put a dent in this thing, so we have to switch out to Snorlax to one-shot it with Surf. And finally, Giovanni sends out Kangaskhan, who manages a single Fake Out before going down to a few body slams. So, with another relatively painless victory in the books, we immediately surf down to Cinnabar Island to face the gym leader Blaine. And true, Sabrina does have a lower level cap than Blaine, so if we really wanted to do things in the proper order, we could face her first. But even going in a few points under-leveled, Blaine should still be a clean sweep with Snorlax thanks to Surf and Thick Fat, which will give us even more staying power against Sabrina thanks to Blaine's Volcano Badge giving us a boost to our special attack and special defense. And as we head into this fight, it turns out my hunch was absolutely right, because Blaine's team just has no shot at taking down this absolute behemoth, especially considering that if Snorlax's health ever dips too low, all we have to do is use Rest to heal back to full and keep attacking with Sleep Talk. So because of that, a few uneventful turns later we've won the Volcano Badge, and now we can proceed to the Saffron Gym to take on Sabrina. And as powerful as Sabrina is with her team of fast special attackers, she does have one weakness, which is that her team have terrible physical defense. So as long as you have access to a Pokemon that's even faster than hers, it will be yet another clean sweep. And indeed, Dodrio fits that bill perfectly, because as we head into the battle, we outspeed and one-shot Kadabra with Tri-Attack, outspeed and one-shot Mr. Mime with Tri-Attack, and outspeed and almost one-shot Venomoth with Tri-Attack. And although Venomoth does annoyingly confuse Dodrio and heal with a Hyper Potion a couple times, we're never actually in any danger of losing, and we eventually take it down. After which we outspeed and one-shot Alakazam with Tri-Attack as well for another painless victory, winning us the Marsh Badge. And speaking of painless victories, up next we head to the Viridian Gym to face Giovanni, and it turns out we have the perfect set of Pokemon to counter his team as well, because as Giovanni leads with Rhyhorn, all we have to do is use Snorlax to take it out with Surf, and when Giovanni switches into Nidoqueen, all we have to do is switch into Dodrio, who is immune to Earthquake, to take it out with a couple Drill Pecks, and when Giovanni sends out his next Rhyhorn, just rinse and repeat with Snorlax, then again with Dodrio against Nidoking, and then finally Dugtrio is so incredibly frail that it stands no chance against Dodrio's Drill Peck, and we outspeed and one-shot it to win us the Earth Badge. And speaking of even more painless victories, against Rival 6 we again have the perfect set of Pokemon to counter everything he has to throw at us, because his opening Pidgeot's attacks are so weak, and Clefable is so bulky that we have the luxury of setting up the full gambit of Minimizes to boost our evasion and prevent the enemy Pokemon from dealing any damage, after which we take out Pidgeot with an Ice Beam into Shockwave, take out Rhyhorn with Ice Beam, take out Execute with Ice Beam, take out Alakazam with a few Ice Beams that even get a freeze partway through followed by a Shockwave, take out Gyarados with a couple Shockwaves, and finally deal just under half to Charizard with Shockwave. Then Charizard manages to bring us to yellow health with a wing attack that spites our Minimizes, so to play it as safe as I can, I switch out to Snorlax, who is obviously in no danger at all thanks to its Thick Fat, plus Gyarados' Rain Dance from a couple turns earlier. So now, all we have to do is spam Surf a few times until Charizard goes down, and with that we're on our way to the Elite Four. Alright folks, this is it. I've made it to the Pokemon League in my first ever Nuzlocke. True, I have made some dire mistakes in this playthrough, but this here is the ultimate test of just how far we've come and just how much I've learned from this experience along the way. And as we head into the Indigo Plateau, our team consists of Snorlax, Dodrio, Clefable, Wigglytuff, Lickitung, and Ditto. And no, that last one isn't a joke. I unironically think Ditto could be an invaluable tool against Agatha's Ghost-type Pokemon if we can manage to set up either Double Team from Gengar or the Hypnosis and Dream Eater combo from Haunter. Additionally, I also want to mention how I'm treating our level cap rule for the Elite Four, which is that we can overlevel past the Elite Four members, but not the champion, because the champion's level cap is so much higher than Lorelei's that this challenge would be virtually impossible if we applied the level cap to each Elite Four member separately. But with that explanation out of the way, all that's left to do is head into Lorelei's chamber and see once and for all if our team of normal-type Pokemon can hold its own. To start, Lorelei leads with Dewgong, who opens with Ice Beam against our Lickitung, and we retaliate with a super effective Brick Break. But since Lickitung's attack stat is so poor, it doesn't even deal half. And yes, I know Lickitung does also know Fire Blast, but that's out of the question since Lorelei's Dewgong has Thick Fat. Then Dewgong sets up Hail as we go for another Brick Break, and finally Dewgong uses Safeguard before the final Brick Break takes it out. Lorelei then sends out Cloyster, who sets up Spikes, and we deal just over half with Fire Blast. Then Cloyster annoyingly stalls us out by protecting itself a few times while we continue to take hail damage, but eventually the hail stops, after which Cloyster sets up hail again, allowing us to take it out with one more Fire Blast. Up next is Slowbro, who takes about a quarter from Strength, and then goes for Yawn to make Lickitung drowsy. So, to prevent Lickitung from falling asleep, I switch out to Snorlax, and since Slowbro and Snorlax are both so bulky, and they're both constantly taking hail damage every turn, this battle is a bit of a slog, especially considering Lorelei at one point uses a full restore, and we also have to heal with Rest to draw out the battle even further, but eventually we do manage to ship Slowbro all the way down, knock it out, and go into Lapras. And once again, this battle takes seemingly forever because Snorlax and Lapras are both defensive tanks, and Lapras continues to prevent Snorlax from attacking with either Confusion from Confuse Ray or Paralysis from Body Slam, forcing us to have to resort to Rest and Sleep Talk not once but twice. But still, we managed to whittle away at Lapras' health just enough for the knockout and go into Lorelei's final Pokemon, Jinx. However, against Jinx is where things start to go south, because as we attempt to heal back up with Rest, Jinx thwarts that plan by putting Snorlax to sleep with Lovely Kiss and then immobilizing it with Attract for good measure. And although Snorlax's bulky special defense and thick fat mean that it only takes tiny chip damage from Jinx's Ice Punches, Jinx still manages to whittle us down to red health and force us to switch out to Wigglytuff. And fortunately on the switch out, Jinx misses its Lovely Kiss and allows us to bring it down to yellow with Strength. But then Jinx outspeeds and lands its Lovely Kiss on the next turn, forcing yet another switch out, this time to Clefable. And here we go for Shockwave, but not before Jinx hits us with an Attract that prevents us from attacking not once but twice in a row, while it continues to chip away with Ice Punch, yet again forcing a switch out to Lickitung. And yep, you guessed it, Jinx immediately puts Lickitung to sleep with another Lovely Kiss, meaning we have to keep the switch out train rolling even further. But here is where I make my most fatal blunder of the run yet, because my plan is to switch out to Dodrio, who I'm hoping will be able to survive an Ice Punch and then outspeed on the next turn for the knockout, but alas, Dodrio's poor defensive stats and type disadvantage make it no match against Jinx's Icy Fists, and it goes down. And it was at this moment that I knew our run was over, because now the rest of our team is left in shambles, and as we continue to summon our Pokemon, Jinx knocks them out one by one. First Clefable, then Snorlax, then Lickitung. And although Wigglytuff does eventually wake up from its slumber to knock out the Jinx with one final strength and defeat Lorelei, that leaves us with only Wigglytuff and Ditto for the remainder of the league, which is obviously nowhere near enough to come out victorious. So, with our team decimated, we have no choice but to admit defeat and restart the game from scratch. However, before we begin the next run, let's recap and talk about what we learned in the first attempt. First of all, it's pretty clear that the absolute MVPs of the run are Snorlax followed immediately by Dodrio, with Clefable playing a strong support role as well. And from there, there's a pretty steep drop-off in the power level of the rest of the team. So because of that, I need to protect those three Pokemon at all costs. And I also need to be willing to sacrifice other Pokemon in battle if it's absolutely necessary. For example, in the Lorelei fight just now, I could have switched out to a much less valuable Pokemon like Lickitung or Ditto, and intentionally allowed Jinx to knock it out, thus allowing Dodrio to get in the first hit on the next turn for the win. Also, another overarching mistake that affected the entire run as a whole is that I'm so used to playing Gen 1 on my channel that I completely neglected the use of held items that could have saved us in a handful of key moments. For example, recovering from paralysis against Lieutenant Surge, or recovering from sleep against Lorelei. And finally, Tauros, Kangaskhan, and Chansey are obviously not viable encounters because they're almost impossible to catch with usual Nuzlocke rules. And also Porygon is not viable because throughout the entire run, we never collected nearly enough money to buy it from the Rocket Game Corner, leaving us with our list of possible encounters to Pidgeot, Raticate, Fearow, Clefable, Wigglytuff, Persian, Farfetch, Dodrio, Lickitung, Ditto, Eevee, and Snorlax. A wide selection for sure, but not so wide that we can afford to play fast and loose with our knockouts like we did in the previous attempt. So, now that we've reassessed everything that we need to complete this challenge successfully this time, let's head into attempt number 2 and see if we can put everything that we've learned into practice. Well, first of all, it turns out that getting past Brock by using Growl from Spearow and Sand Attack from Pidgey is just a complete gamble, and there's really no elegant strategy apart from just resetting until you get lucky enough to avoid Onix's Rock Tomb. Additionally, I also learned throughout all these repeated attempts at Brock that he's pretty much impossible to defeat if your Rattata doesn't have guts for the boosted damage against Onix. So it eventually got to the point that we just kept resetting for a Guts Rattata without even attempting Brock otherwise. Eventually though, we do make it past Brock by sacrificing Spearow during the battle, leaving us with Rattata and Pidgey still in our party. So, we proceed forward to Cerulean City, where we face Rival 2. And here, our plan is very different than it was before, because we open with Pidgeotto with its Keen Eye ability to play around the opposing Sand Attack, and the two Pidgeottos trade attacks back and forth, with us winning the damage race as we go into Rattata. And since I know Rattata could knock us out with Hyper Fang, we have to switch out to Clefairy to take the next attack, after which we put Rattata to sleep with Sing, and then one-shot it with Mega Punch. And then, even though Charmander does bring us to yellow with an Ember, we still put it to sleep with Sing and knock it out while it stays asleep, meaning we functionally won because the rival's Abra doesn't know any attacking moves, and a few turns later, we've gotten past the rival with 0 deaths in the entire battle. And now that we've made it this far in the run without losing our Guts Rattata like we did last time, that completely changes the complexion of this playthrough in comparison to the previous, because now, as we defeat Misty and head south to Vermilion to face Lieutenant Surge, this time around we don't have to get cute with any fancy dig strats, and we can instead use our pre-poisoned Raticate to outspeed and one-shot the entire team. And from here, my guess is that the rest of the mid-game leading up to the Elite Four should be a complete cinch, especially considering that the only deaths we came across in our first attempt were from simple beginner mistakes that we can easily avoid this time around. For example, this time in preparation for Erika, I taught Fly to Pidgeotto to get a better damage range against her Ace Vileplume for the knockout. And against Rival 5, we abandoned the Swords Dance setup with Farfetch'd, since Farfetch'd is so frail that setup is pretty much useless anyway, and we instead lead with Pidgeot to use Fly, which deals almost half to the opposing Pidgeot. But then the enemy Pidgeot uses Feather Dance to sharply cut our attack stat, so our next Fly only does a blip. So because of that, we have to switch into Snorlax, who I equipped with leftovers to heal our HP every turn for even more staying power, and we take out Pidgeot with a couple body slams. Then against Gyarados, we switch out to Clefable, who takes a Leer to drop our defense, followed by a Dragon Rage to deal about a third. Then the super effective Shockwave deals over half to Gyarados, and after Clefable tanks another Dragon Rage, one more Shockwave gets the job done. Then the rival sends out Charizard, and we switch out to our Charizard Buster in the form of Snorlax, who takes a couple wing attacks to yellow health, then retaliates with a Surf to deal half. Then, since in this run we again lucked out by getting a Snorlax with Thick Fat, Charizard will never use Flamethrower, and instead just keep spamming Wing Attack down to about a quarter. And although it looked like our next Surf would get the knockout, Charizard hangs on by a sliver and goes for another Wing Attack down to Red. And now, to prepare for the rest of the rival's team, we use Rest to heal back up to full, and although the next Sleep Talk does get the knockout, Charizard did manage a Smoke Screen to lower our accuracy before going down. So that means against Execute we have to switch into Dodrio. And on the switch, Execute could inflict us with any number of status conditions, but thankfully it just goes for confusion without actually confusing us, and a super effective Drill Peck gets the one-shot. And finally, Dodrio is so fast that we can use Tri-Attack to outspeed and one-shot Alakazam as well. And now that we've gotten past the most contentious fights of the run, and also the fights where we made the biggest mistakes on our first attempt, the rest of the mid-game goes exactly as smoothly as it did last time, meaning that we can sweep our way through Koga, Blaine, Sabrina, Giovanni, and Rival 6 using the exact same strategies as we did before, leaving us in a much stronger position to take on the Elite Four, with our team consisting of Pidgeot, Raticate, Clefable, Persian, Dodrio, and Snorlax. So now, all that's left to do is make our way through Victory Road, head into Lorelei's chamber for the second time, and see if we can use everything we've learned so far to claim our victory. To start, we lead with Clefable and open with Shockwave to deal almost half, and Lorelei's Dewgong opens by setting up Hail. Then, as we continue to spam Shockwave, Dewgong brings us to low green with Surf, Lorelei heals with a full restore, and Dewgong uses Safeguard before eventually going down. Against Cloyster, we continue spamming Shockwave as the first attack brings it to low yellow, and Cloyster again sets up Hail. Then, as usual, Cloyster stalls with Protect to damage us with Hail even further, but its second Protect fails, and the next Shockwave gets the knockout. And now, since our health is so low, against Slowbro we have to switch into Snorlax, who tanks a Surf no problem, and after spamming Body Slam for a few turns we knock out Slowbro and go into Lapras comfortably in the green. And now, in typical Lapras fashion, it opens with Confuse Ray, but we manage to spite the confusion for a Body Slam that deals almost half. Then Lapras uses a Body Slam of its own, and although it doesn't deal that much damage, it does get its 30% chance to paralyze, after which Snorlax hits itself in confusion. But still, Snorlax is tanky enough that as long as we keep spamming Body Slam, we should have enough staying power to win the damage race. And after a few more turns of trading attacks back and forth, Lapras goes down, and we go into Jinx in yellow health. And because Jinx's attacking moves of Ice Punch and Double Slap are so unthreatening, and because Jinx can't possibly put us to sleep or freeze us because we're already paralyzed, that means we're in the clear to use Rest to heal back up to full. Then, over the next several turns, Jinx uses some of the trolliest stall strats I've ever seen, because it prevents us from attacking with Attract over and over again, then puts us to sleep with Lovely Kiss, all the while dealing tiny chip damage with Ice Punch. But eventually, after a complete grind, we manage to power through the Attract and Sleep tactics to land a Body Slam for the knockout. Meaning that after all this time, we finally defeated Lorelei and reached the furthest point in the game that we've achieved in any of our attempts so far. So from here on out, this is uncharted territory that we'll have to navigate as carefully as possible if we want to have any chance at coming out on top. So now, let's head into Bruno's chamber and see how we fare in the last 4 battles of the run. To start, we lead with Snorlax, and Bruno leads with Onix. And unlike in Gen 1, where Bruno is just a complete joke, in Gen 3 his Pokemon actually have useful moves that can deal some serious damage. But still, Snorlax is such a tank that Onix's opening Earthquake only does a blip, and we easily take out the Onix with Surf. Then Bruno sends out Hitmonchan, and to play around its super effective fighting type attacks, we switch into Dodrio, and luckily Hitmonchan just misses with a Sky Uppercut before our super effective Drill Peck takes it out. Next, Bruno summons Machamp, and it survives Drill Peck in the red, and uses Scary Face to cut our speed. But Dodrio is so ridiculously fast that we still manage to outspeed on the next turn for the knockout. Hitmonlee, however, does outspeed and lands a Mega Kick to deal almost half. Then obviously Drill Peck one-shots Hitmonlee as well, and finally against the last Onix, we're totally safe to switch back into Snorlax and knock it out with one final Surf. So it looks like here Bruno is not a complete pushover, but we still got through that fight pretty painlessly. Up next, however, is Agatha, and in Gen 1, Agatha can be a run killer for so many Pokemon, but in Gen 3, her team is even more powerful than before, with her Pokemon getting hard-hitting physical moves like Sludge Bomb and Shadow Punch, as well as their disruptive setup moves like Hypnosis and Double Team that make it almost impossible to consistently land the finishing blow. Fortunately though, we are going in with a plan, because although Agatha's Gengars are notoriously fast, Dodrio is even faster, allowing us to get in the first hit with a Drill Peck that deals over half. But then Gengar goes for Double Team in an effort to stall us out, so now after a single Double Team, that means we're 2 and 3 to land our next attack. So, moment of truth, we go for Drill Peck, my heart skips a beat, and the attack lands for the knockout. Wow, talk about a bullet dodged. If we had missed even just an attack or two, that could have spelled disaster for us. But regardless, against Golbat we take it out with a couple tri-attacks, with Golbat getting in an air cutter before going down, and next out comes Arbok. And now to play around Arbok's strong attack and Dodrio's low defense, we switch out to Snorlax, who takes about a quarter, and also becomes poisoned from Sludge Bomb. Then since I know Arbok will hit us with another Sludge Bomb, we use Rest to heal back up to full. Then while Arbok continues to spam nothing but Sludge Bomb, we use Sleep Talk strats, but unfortunately Sleep Talk continues to select Rest, which has no effect since we're already asleep. And now that Arbok's gotten us down to yellow, after waking up we have to use Rest a second time to start the whole cycle back over again. Eventually though, we do manage to land a single Sleep Talk Body Slam to bring Arbok to yellow, but now since Arbok is within striking distance of a knockout, we switch into Pidgeot to finish the job. On the switch, Pidgeot takes a devastating Sludge Bomb down to low yellow, but as long as we knock out Arbok with Fly, we should be in the clear. So we go for Fly, but alas, Arbok hangs on by a thread and knocks out Pidgeot in the next turn, resulting in our first death of the run since Brock. Luckily though, that does give us a free switch into Dodrio, and although Agatha does use a preemptive full restore, since we outspeed we can take out the Arbok with a couple more tri-attacks before it ever has the chance to strike back, allowing us to head into Agatha's Ace Gengar. And here, just like with the first Gengar, we outspeed and Drill Peck brings it down to yellow. Then Gengar goes for Hypnosis, but in another stroke of sheer luck, it gets its 40% chance to miss. Unfortunately though, Gengar's Citrus Berry heals it back up to green, preventing our next Drill Peck from getting the knockout and allowing Gengar to land a Hypnosis this time. However, I came prepared for this very moment, because before this fight, I equipped Dodrio with a Chesto Berry to recover it from sleep, allowing us to land another Drill Peck. Annoyingly though, Agatha does use a full restore, but it makes no difference, because just like with Arbok from earlier, the fact that we outspeed means we can take Gengar down to yellow, then use one final Drill Peck for the knockout. And finally, out comes Haunter, who we outspeed in one shot with a critical hit Drill Peck for the win. And folks, let me tell you, it was at this moment that my heart started racing, because now, in my first ever hardcore Nuzlocke, we've defeated arguably the most difficult trainer of the run, with 5 of our strongest team members still at the ready. We're so close to the finish line I can taste it, and not to mention, we're going into the last 2 battles of the run with the utmost confidence, because if I've planned everything out as well as I think I have, our team has just the right tools to contend with both Lance and the champion with ease. So now, let's kick off the fight against Lance to show you exactly what I mean. To start, we lead with Clefable against Lance's opening Gyarados, and our plan here is to put Gyarados to sleep with Sing, and then spam Minimize to dodge the rest of the team's attacks, which works beautifully because, although Gyarados does manage a couple Dragon Rages while we try to keep it asleep, Clefable is never actually in any danger, because all the while it's healing with leftovers as we continue to spam Minimize. Then, after the setup is complete, Gyarados goes down to a couple Shockwaves, and we go into Aerodactyl at full health. And although Aerodactyl does spite the Minimize a single time to land an Ancient Power, after that, Lance's Pokemon fail to land another attack for the entire rest of the battle, allowing us to spam the super effective Ice Beam until we take down each of his Pokemon one by one. And now, all we have is one final battle left in the run, the Champion. But instead of hyping it up any further, let's just head into the Champion's Chamber, kick off the fight, and see what our team of normal-type Pokemon is really made of. To start, for the first time in the entire playthrough we lead with Persian, who at this point is nothing more than sack fodder for what's about to come next. First, we lead with Slash to deal about a third, and Pidgeot uses Feather Dance to harshly drop our attack stat. Then, because Slash has a high critical hit ratio, we go for Slash again, but since it doesn't land the crit, it only takes Pidgeot to about half, and Pidgeot retaliates with an Aerial Ace to deal about a third. Then, as Persian and Pidgeot continue trading Slash for Aerial Ace, Persian eventually loses the damage race and gets knocked out. So, we switch to Raticate to finish off Pidgeot with Strength. Then the champion sends out Alakazam, and with the assistance of Guts, Raticate has no problem getting the one-shot. But now against Exeggutor, this is where our real innovation takes place. Because before this fight, I taught Clefable the TMs for Rest and Toxic, replacing Shockwave and Ice Beam, bringing our moveset to Rest, Toxic, Sing, and Minimize. And I'm sure you can see exactly where this is going, because we immediately put Exeggutor to sleep and then spam minimize. Eventually though, Exeggutor does wake up and land a sleep powder, but that's no problem because we wake up with a Chesto Berry. And now that we finished setting up our minimize, we hit Exeggutor with Toxic and just patiently wait for the poison damage to accumulate while we spam do nothing moves. Eventually though, Exeggutor does land another sleep powder and the champion does use a full restore, but that's still not a problem because we wake up on the next turn, poison Exeggutor again, and after Exeggutor lands an Egg Bomb, we can use Rest to stall out Exeggutor even further. Then after bringing Exeggutor down to red, the champion uses yet another full restore, and we have to go through the same song and dance yet again, but eventually it goes down as we move on to Rhydon. And here we could switch into Snorlax to take it out with Surf, but since switching out would get rid of our minimize, I decided to go for the Rest Toxic strat in this case as well. But it turns out that's all for naught, because after a long back and forth of Clefable resting and the champion using full restore, Rhydon finally manages to land a critical hit Earthquake for the knockout, which is a real shame because I wanted to use Toxic and Rest against the upcoming Gyarados as well, but it looks like now we'll have to find a different plan of attack. So we send out Snorlax, who brushes off an Earthquake and obviously finishes off Rhydon with Surf. And now against Gyarados, this battle turns out to be the grindiest of grindfests, because Gyarados' Intimidate drops Snorlax's attack, meaning Body Slam won't deal as much damage, and Gyarados resists Surf. Still, Gyarados' attacking moves can't actually deal that much damage to Snorlax, so I still think the best play is to just continue using Rest and Sleep Talk over and over to whittle away at Gyarados until it goes down. And although it does take seemingly forever thanks to a full restore from the champion, several minutes later we manage to paralyze Gyarados and hit it with a couple more body slams for the knockout. And now, all that's left is Charizard, facing off against our Charizard Buster. And we even have Dodrio and Raticate as backups to finish the job, on the off chance that we actually lose our Snorlax. So, although I don't want to count our chickens before they hatch, I'm really liking our position here. To start, Charizard brings us to about 2/3 with Aerial Ace, and we retaliate with a Sleep Talk Body Slam to deal about 1/4. Then, as Snorlax wakes up, Charizard and Snorlax continue to trade Aerial Ace for Surf to bring Charizard to red and Snorlax to yellow. And then, in a desperate attempt for the knockout, Charizard goes for one final Fire Blast, but our thick fat allows us to survive in the red and retaliate with one final Surf to take out the Charizard, making us, after all this time, champion of the Pokemon League. At the start of this challenge, I definitely went in thinking, hey, it's just a Nuzlocke, how hard could it be? But no, this experience gave me a new appreciation for just how much patience and planning Nuzlocking really takes. And now, as I continue to create more content, I can't wait to put everything I've learned into practice as I go on to improve my skill. And speaking of, as a beginner Nuzlocker, I'm sure I made tons of mistakes in this run that I didn't even realize. So, if you're a more experienced Nuzlocker yourself, and you have any tips on how to get better, feel free to share your ideas. And finally, if you enjoyed today's video, be sure to give it a like, subscribe if you haven't already, and ring the bell so you never miss another release, as well as follow me on Twitch to catch live streams, and consider supporting the channel on Patreon. Thanks so much, everyone. See you next time, and take care.